Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rebecca Ellis, and I grew up in Burlington. I was appointed to the state legislature in January 2011 to represent Waterbury, Duxbury, Huntington, and Buell's Gorge. And prior to that, I worked as an Assistant Attorney General for the state of Vermont for 14 years. And I also serve on the Waterbury Select Board. I am very pleased today to support Bill Sorrell for Vermont Attorney General. Bill Sorrell is a dedicated public servant with all of the qualifications, experience, and integrity necessary for this rigorous job. Having worked at the Attorney General's office for 14 years, I can tell you that Bill approaches the office with the highest level of professionalism. He abides by high standards himself, and he imparts these standards on the attorneys around him. The office, under Bill Sorrell's guidance, evaluates cases free of partisanship or favoritism. The result is litigation that is fair and even-handed, and a record that all Vermonters can be proud of. Bill Sorrell also has the experience necessary to run a large legal office. The Attorney General's office is sometimes referred to as the largest law firm in the state. Many people are aware of the high-profile criminal cases that the office handles. Perhaps less known is the fact that the criminal division is only one of 6 divisions within the Attorney General's office. The office also handles a large caseload of complex civil litigation, enforcing laws that range from consumer protection to civil rights, from the environment to health care. Bill has experience as a state's attorney doing criminal work, as a private attorney doing civil litigation, and as Secretary of Administration under Governor Dean. With all of this experience, there is no person better qualified to be Vermont Attorney General than Bill Sorrell. I also support Bill Sorrell because he is a strong advocate for the rights of Vermonters. Thanks to Bill's drive and commitment, Vermont is a national leader in the battle against big tobacco, against coal polluters in the Midwest, and against car manufacturers who didn't want to reduce their CO2 emissions. Vermont took on these battles against well-funded multinational corporations and won. Over the last 15 years, Bill Sorrell has consistently and successfully prosecuted violations of the law while defending the rights of Vermonters and providing assistance to those most in need. I am proud to support Bill Sorrell for Vermont Attorney General, and I hope you will join me. I am now pleased to introduce Bill Sorrell.
Thank you all for joining me here today, and a particular thanks to Rebecca Ellis. And thank you for the kind remarks, Rebecca. We miss you in the AG. You can come back anytime you want. It has been my great honor and pleasure to serve all Vermonters as the Attorney General for the past 15 years. I am proud of my record in this important office. I want to continue to be of service to the residents of this great state. I have been called a two-fisted Attorney General, and there's a reason for that. I have never backed away from aggressively but fairly enforcing our laws, even when confronting wealthy and powerful opponents. 4 weeks to the day after taking the oath of office, I sued Big Tobacco. As a result of that suit, Vermont has received over $300 million. And unless Americans stop their addiction to cigarettes and thereby conquer what remains the greatest avoidable public health problem confronting this state and this nation, Vermont will continue to receive at least $25 million a year, every year, forever, from the settlement of that one lawsuit. So I'm proud of that. And I'm also proud of the fact that when the auto industry fought Vermont's adoption of more restrictive emission standards for motor vehicles, my office successfully defended the industry attacks in federal court here in Vermont. Our victory in that case is one of national importance in the effort to have cleaner, more fuel-efficient cars and trucks on the roadways of America. That, my friends, is a victory for a cleaner environment. And as a result of enforcing our consumer protection and antitrust laws, millions of dollars have been returned to Vermont consumers' wallets. And since prevention is so vitally important, our effective efforts to educate Vermonters on the dangers of identity thieves and scam artists have allowed many more millions of dollars to remain in Vermonters' pockets and not be lost to criminals, both domestic and foreign. And in the criminal arena, my office has worked efficiently and productively with all levels of police in many of Vermont's most notorious cases. We have successfully prosecuted murderers, rapists, and those who prey on our most vulnerable. We lead the fight in the Attorney General's office against trafficking in dangerous drugs. Vermonters want, expect, and are entitled to even-handed justice. I take this very seriously. We don't play favorites. There is no double standard when it comes to wrongdoing by law enforcement officers and public officials. Just ask the dozens of former county sheriffs, state and local police, and municipal officials whom we have convicted of violating Vermont's criminal statutes. I'm proud of that record of even-handed justice. We have worked effectively in the legislature and have successfully seen the passage of new laws to outlaw the possession of child pornography, hazing in our schools from our earliest grades through college. And as a Notre Dame graduate, I'm proud that we were able to convince the legislature to require members of religious organizations to report suspected instances of child abuse. I have championed the availability of special investigative units for sex crimes throughout the state. But much remains to be done. And that is why today I formally declare my candidacy for re-election as Vermont's Attorney General. I look forward to campaigning all over this state to help Vermonters better understand the role of the Attorney General, my record in this office, and my priorities for my next term. Thanks to my initiative, the legislature has just appropriated $200,000 to enhance law enforcement's battles against the online sharing of identified child pornography. A newly authorized criminal investigator in my office will be dedicated to this fight. With the help of others, we will increase our efforts to go after the hundreds of individual computer users in this state who violate our child pornography laws and who, so unfortunately, pose such real risk of sexual predation on Vermont's children. Also, in my next term, I will redouble our efforts to see that there is responsible and safe use of social media like Facebook. Vermonters will be better informed as to how to protect their personal privacy in the online world. And we will respond aggressively to cyberbullying and unlawful forms of discrimination. Zealous and impartial enforcement of our campaign finance laws will remain a priority. And this two-fisted Attorney General will fight, fight, fight to uphold Vermont's laws, giving Vermonters a real say as to the future of Entergy's operations in this state.
Yes.
It should go without saying, I cannot do all of this and more without the very able assistance of the hardworking members of the Attorney General's office. So my heartfelt thanks to my staff for their support and for their dedication to enhancing the health and safety of all Vermonters, particularly those most in need. I look forward to debate with my opponent, to comparing our records, and to compare our priorities for the future. I thank the many thousands of Vermont voters who in so many past elections have placed their trust in me as the state's chief law enforcement officer. I seek that strong support again in the primary election in August and then in the general election in November. But for now, I close by saying, let the campaign officially begin. Now, if there are any questions from any of the media here, I'm happy to field some questions. Otherwise, yes.
What's the number one problem facing Vermont right now in your eyes? The number one problem facing Vermont right now in your eyes?
Oh, I think that issues involving the World Wide Web, the internet, social media, that all of the opportunities it offers us in commerce and communication and such, that's wonderful. But there's a downside to this, and thieves, scam artists, those cyber stalkers, those who prey on people young and old, are taking advantage of the web, of the internet, to go about their business. And so I think we must do a lot more to educate Vermonters not to fall prey to the scams. We've got to educate more, particularly young Vermonters, using the social media to responsibly use the social media, protect their privacy, respond when cyberbullying takes place. So I think those are, there are a lot of serious problems facing Vermont, but trying to stay abreast of new technology and to help Vermonters use it responsibly and effectively, but don't be victimized by it. I think that's a huge challenge for us going forward.
Would you want to initiate some kind of educational campaign then?
Yeah, actually started that last night, just coincidentally, brought Facebook here, a presentation at Essex High School for educators, parents, and students. It was filmed, we'll be showing that, and just the beginning of more education for those using social media. And then, you know, I was at a press conference down in Rutland, I think some of you were at, with AARP and Fairpoint, about the telephone scams that are preying particularly on the elderly in Vermont, But an awful lot of us have gotten those calls from Merchants Bank here in the last couple of weeks, and a lot of those scams are coming in over the web, supposedly from banks saying your debit card's been compromised and such. And the reality is, when you wire money overseas or wherever you wire it in response to one of these scam communications, it's gone. Law enforcement is not going to get your money back. So prevention, being a wise consumer, is a real priority for us in this next term.
You said that you look forward to comparing your record with your opponents. What do you make of your opponent's record?
Well, he's done a very good job as the Chittenden County State's Attorney, but I was the Chittenden County State's Attorney 2 different times, appointed by 2 different governors. Tried some of the toughest criminal cases there, and I started the Chittenden Unit for Special Investigations, which has gotten national recognition as a model for a coordinated law enforcement investigative group looking at sex crimes and serious child abuse cases. I endorsed T.J. Donovan for State's Attorney when he ran, and my hope is that the voters of Vermont will, in the Democratic primary in August, will decide that he should remain the Chittenden County.
Well, you're saying you want to compare your records. Is there anything in the record that you think is problematic or anything he's done?
I didn't even say that. I'm saying, the Attorney General's office, obviously, we have statewide criminal jurisdiction, and that's a piece of what the Attorney General does. But as Rebecca Ellis suggested, whether it's environmental protection, civil rights protection, civil law enforcement, defending Vermont's laws when they are attacked, not to mention being legal counsel for the Department of Corrections, the Department of Children and Families, you name it. I mean, we just got on the letter to the Congress about the Citizens United, the constitutional amendment. We're just on the brief at the Supreme Court on the immigration law in Arizona on the side of the federal government. We were on the brief on the side of the federal government in the Supreme Court case on the Affordable Care Act. Attorney General, the office impacts Vermonters in many, many, many different ways. And the Chittenden County State's Attorney's job is an important position. As I said, I've held it twice. This is a much bigger job, and I have the record in this job that I'm proud of.
Why, after 15 years, is this potentially a competitive race with me for comparison and campaigning on your part?
Well, I've had the luxury of not having serious opposition in the past, I have an opponent this time, so it would be foolish of me to just sit back and say, oh, I've been in there and I'm not going to take it seriously. T.J. Donovan has every right to run in this race, and I'm looking forward to campaigning all over the state and talking about my record and my priorities going forward, and let the voters come August 28th make a decision who the Democratic nominee for Attorney General is going to be in November.
Have you ever had this kind of a kickoff before, or have we just not come, or?
I think it's actually me. I did have at least 1 or 2 others that were sparsely attended by the media, so welcome to all of you.
Your opponent suggested that when you sign on to the tobacco lawsuit or those other things that now bring in money, that you're just signing on to a national thing, that you're at the table but you're not cooking the meal.
That shows a profound misunderstanding of the history, as a number of the people here will attest. The reality is my predecessor did not file suit against the tobacco industry. I did 4 weeks to the day after I came in, and we did not just file the suit and then let it sit on the docket. As Julie Brill, former assistant AG, now on the Federal Trade Commission, will attest, we litigated the case very hard and moved up the ranks to be set for trial. And then I went to the legislature and convinced the legislature to enact a statute similar to what had happened in Florida that prevented or prohibited the tobacco industry from blaming the smokers in a lawsuit brought by the state. In other words, the state was the innocent party here that is paying for medical costs for those who get their health insurance from the Medicaid program, and in a lawsuit from the state against the industry can't blame the smokers. We're the innocent payer here. And that enactment of that statute, and I thank Senator Sears for helping push that through the legislature, played a big part in bringing the industry more seriously to the table to settle the lawsuit, because they could see that these enactments of these statutes in other states were going to prevent them from blaming the people who bought the products that they marketed to in a lawsuit from the states. And so somebody can say, I just signed on and reaped the benefits, but that's revisionist history.
You're the state's chief law enforcement officer.
I am.
What do you make of the fact that the Sheriff's Association and the troopers are endorsing your opponent?
Well, you have to ask them. But quite frankly, we review criminal conduct on the part of law enforcement. We take that seriously. I said there's no double standard. There's no prosecutor in Vermont history who's prosecuted more law enforcement than I. I don't know why they've made that endorsement, but they have every right to make that endorsement. The reality is, the endorsement I'm most concerned about is August 28th from Vermont voters. You know, I can play the endorsement game with former governor speaking at my campaign kickoff party this evening, a number of state senators, chairs of various committees, representatives like Rebecca Ellis and others. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's the average Vermont voter who's going to decide. That's the endorsement that I'm most seeking, and I respect the Troopers Association and the sheriffs. I know from communications I've had with troopers and other law enforcement just within the last few days that I'm going to get a lot of votes out of law enforcement. And we'll get endorsements out from well-known individuals in law enforcement and in other fields in the state during the course of the campaign. It'd be great if everybody endorsed me, but that's, you know, that's not going to happen. It hasn't happened, and we're moving forward with a positive, issues-oriented campaign, and we expect to be successful August 28th, very successful.
Right at the beginning, were you suggesting, or maybe I misunderstood, that perhaps the troopers and the sheriffs didn't endorse you because you have prosecuted some law enforcement?
No, I don't know why they did that, but you know, to the extent that there's some thought that the Attorney General is always on the side of law enforcement as the state's chief law enforcement officer is not the case. And in order for even-handed justice, and the kind of justice that Vermonters expect, when we see violations of the law, we're expected to investigate them thoroughly and to take action if appropriate. And I have done that. And you know, why the sheriffs endorsed and the Troopers Association endorsed, I don't know, but I respect their right to do that.
Did you see either of their endorsements?
I didn't, no, I did not, although the Troopers Association invited me to come in and address them, and so I did go in and had a cordial meeting with them, and they made the decision that they made, and again, I respect that. The truth is, we defend when civil lawsuits are brought against state troopers for excessive force and such. We defend those cases, and we've been extremely successful in those cases, and I can't tell you how many notes and phone calls I've received from troopers and supervisors expressing their gratitude for how seriously we've stood up in the civil courts to defend members of the state police who are sued for performance of their duties.
Your opponent also suggested that you should perhaps push back more to the legislature on legislation that ended up not passing constitutional muster.
You know, the reality is that if you, the media, go talking to speakers of the House, presidents pro tem, various committee chairs, you'll know that in the campaign finance arena, in the access to prescribers' records, on the Entergy Vermont Yankee cases, that we had meetings, private and public, where we expressed concerns that the legislature was pushing the envelope and that we might well be sued. And I know in, for example, the campaign finance, if you go back to look at the legislative record, I believe it was then Representative Lynn Bohai from the Hartford area, who got up on the floor of the House and said, we've been told we're going to be sued. We know we're going to be sued. But, you know, we can't just cut and run every time some wealthy organization says it's going to sue us. This is the right thing to do. If we get sued, we'll take our lumps. And, you know, in that case, we won at the trial level, we won at the Intermediate Appeals Court level, and then we ran into what many legal scholars describe as the most conservative U.S. Supreme Court in more than 100 years in this country. And unfortunately, we lost at the Supreme Court level. You know, stay tuned to what's going to happen to the Solicitor General of the United States for the decisions that will be coming down between now and the end of June on the Affordable Care Act, on the Arizona immigration law, and some other important matters. Now, that being said, Vermont has not been afraid to take full advantage of our constitutional rights as a laboratory of democracy to push the envelope. And the reality is, under federal law, those matters that are not specifically reserved to the federal government, that the states can experiment. And we took full advantage of that when we became a state. We were the first state in the Union, in our Constitution, to ban slavery. The first. We were the first state in our Constitution to grant the universal right for male suffrage without regard to property ownership. We were the state that required the labeling of consumer products carrying mercury. We were sued. We went to federal court. Ultimately, we won. That's a case where the legislature pushed the envelope. The legislature pushed the envelope in the first state to allow Vermonters to not have credit companies, credit rating agencies access our credit without our permission. Well, MCI, the long-distance carrier, made a big mistake. They accessed the personal credit histories of 14,000 Vermonters, and under our statute, Vermont was the only state with a statute that at that time, it's a $100 fine or the greater of a $100 fine or actual damages. Well, 14,000 Vermont households got letters from the Attorney General's office with a $100 check in it. That was a good day. That's $1.4 million. That was a good day for Vermont consumers. And because the legislature pushed the envelope and got Vermont out ahead of the rest of the country on trying to maintain the privacy of Vermonters. So I could go on this, but you know, the reality is, we don't want to be reckless. We've been in the legislature giving them advice. They've taken our advice. They've made their decisions. We've told them if we can make arguments to defend the laws. By and large, we've been successful. We've had a few losses. We've paid out a little over $3 million in attorney's fees. That's unfortunate, but our office brought in over $40 million last year, that year alone. $3 million over 15 years in attorney's fees. Unfortunate to have to pay it out, but $40 million last year, $40 million plus the year before, about $40 million this year, from successful enforcement of our laws. I think Vermonters have been very well served by the Attorney General's office. So on that contention, if there's some suggestion that we haven't sufficiently been in the legislature warning that the envelope's being pushed, there could be litigation, and it might be successful litigation, that's just not true. And I encourage you to talk to legislative leaders to confirm what I'm saying. With all that, I thank you for being here. It's nice to have the media here at this announcement. And,